Howdy folks, welcome to the Daily Coin. My name is Rory and today is Monday, April the 4th, 2016, and I have the great honor of welcoming to the show for the first time Mike from SilverFarm, and Mike's website is an audio MP3 website, and he hosts a world of the people that we all listen to and follow, like TF Metals Report, Daily Coin, Shadow of Truth. Give us a couple of others, Mike, that you have over there.
We've got exclusively Andy Hoffman from Miles Franklin. Jason Burak from Wall Street from Main Street has been one of our longest running contributors. We relay the Silver Doctors audio weekly that they do, and then any of the supplemental stuff. James Corbett, and a number of others that come across interesting topics.
Well, I know you've got just a world going on over there, and it's growing like crazy. And Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Roy. It's snowing. It's April, but otherwise I'm doing all right. How are you today?
I'm all right. I love global warming.
Yeah, I could use a little bit more of it up here today.
Oh, well, we've got a lot of ground to cover, so we'll just jump right in. What do you say?
Sounds great.
Yeah, I thought the Free State Project was Maine, but it's New Hampshire.
Yep, it's New Hampshire, and they're great. I mean, I'm a native from up here. I actually was born across the river in Vermont, but you know, the only issue is that they're coming about pretty heavy-handed, and you know, the regular folks around here have not embraced the ideas as much, I think, as they had if they'd had some ambassadors, right, and had come a little bit more softly, I think that they would have, you know, had a little more buy-in from the populace. But the bottom line is the populace is not involved, and these guys are, and they are very active, and they've made some huge gains within state government. And so far, it doesn't look like the power is going to their head. So far, they're pushing in the right direction. So.
Well, that's good. Hopefully, that trend will continue. I mean,
yeah,
I'm
no
sure
doubt.
You're familiar with state of Jefferson, and there's a couple of other fairly large pushes to secede. There's one in Colorado also. There's another group. I can't remember what their organization is.
Yeah, I know, and I really hope that idea makes it back into the popular lexicon, that that dividing ourselves up to take care of problems is the way it was what was intended, and it's not a bad thing at all. To bring the power back to a local level.
Well, that's the way that it was designed. That is
no, exactly.
I mean, that's what the Constitution is all about. That's why it's called the United States.
Right, not the United States. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. That one S is a yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. That's why it's been so important to not teach, original intent to the population at large, because they would get the wrong ideas,
Yeah, like you have freedom.
Right. Right.
You don't we're not here as a self-serving, self-perpetuating body, or as Gerald Celente calls, gang of 535. We're actually here to do very little.
Yes, yeah, and the idea that you should be able to, within a short drive, get to the offices of your officials and wring their neck if need be, is something that is completely escapes people. But we see the consequences of it.
We're living through the consequences of being lazy and arrogant, which is one of the things that I believe that we've been taught. I mean, I believe that it goes back to the indoctrination system, we'll call it public education, and what they have done, in particular with history and civics and social studies and math, all of these things that provide children with the critical thought have been completely stripped out, not to mention art and music. Art and
Right.
music. I mean, art and music were stripped out of public education soon after I left. And I graduated high school in 1980, and soon after that, art and music came under attack, and they were completely stripped out of the system. They were waning when I was leaving.
Yeah. No, I mean, I only have one small quarrel, and that's in terms, which is that we don't have a public education system.
No,
We have a public school system. And in nature, the word school is only really used one other way, and that's as in a school of fish, where there is a gigantic collective that moves together, based on these unseen forces. Whoever the lead fish is that you can't even identify from the outside, makes one little move, and the whole school responds. And this is by design. I mean,
yes,
you don't have to be a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist, which I'm not, to go back and look at what was being discussed, when the public school system was first devised. These people had no problem spelling out, in extremely precise terms, what they were hoping to accomplish. At this time, if you transport yourself back to around the time of the Civil War, a little bit before, over in Prussia, which is modern, in the area of modern day Germany, they found that their soldiers were not being good soldiers. They were not working as a school, working as a unit, as a team. And the intellectuals at that time posited that this was because they had too much critical thinking ability, that they were far too free thinking, because these armies were, they were amassed from the common folk. And to harken back to that time there, and also here, the vast majority of people had their own independent livelihoods. They did not work for, a company. And if you did work for a company, it was only to build some capital and build some skills to strike out on your own. And so these intellectuals went about went about a slow, methodical process of devising this schooling system. And they had in mind that they needed workers. They needed workers, because this is the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, where you're asking people to perform repetitive, monotonous tasks. They needed to be smart enough to perform these tasks, but not smart enough to strike out on their own. And this is the dawn of the progressive era, where it was all about planning. It was all about, constructing this new modern human, that you had a ruling class, and then you had the much larger class of workers. And so the roots of the public schooling system, are found right there. And, now, 150 years later, you see, the effects of it, which is easy it is to get upset with the people that we see that have their heads buried so firmly in the sand. I have a lot of empathy for these people, because they know no different. They were set up to fail from the very beginning. Um, if you wanted to make independent, critical thinking humans, you would not devise a system such as the current public school system.
right.
So,
And they're planning on making it even worse by rolling out Common Core, which is the reason that we're speaking today. And I know that you have, from conversation in the past, that you have homeschooled your children in order to avoid the rigors of Common Core and what its potential is to take this whole indoctrination system to a whole nother level of dumbed down. I personally believe that that it has the potential to strip all intelligence out of the children and
I,
to make them nothing more than another widget in the machine, and that's it. That's
Mhm.
the sole purpose of it. And when I live in Tennessee and I live in Nashville, which is the capital, and when they introduced Common Core to the state of Tennessee, it's been about 18 months to 20 to 2 years ago. They had all of these business leaders, praising it, saying how great it is and how wonderful and blah, blah, blah. And it's just, the greatest thing since sliced bread, this Common Core. And now they are threatening, they're not threatening, they are tying uh, certain federal budget items to the rolling out of Common Core. If you don't you incorporate Common Core into your curriculum, your federal road funds will be cut off, which,
But
as we all know, that is a massive, massive chunk of our money that gets returned to us.
oh, absolutely. And this is straight out of their playbook. I mean, they've done this so many times, from the drinking age to the 55-mile-an-hour national speed limit. One of the most hamstringing factors for local and state governments has been the interstate highway system, where that is the universal club. The federal government collects the money out of the states, and then they have to comply, to get it back. We actually started educating our own kids, completely reluctantly. Our My son was in public school until April of first grade, and we had no choice. He was absolutely miserable. He was convinced that he hated to read. He was never going to read. It was just terrible. And for the entire school year, we complied with exactly what the school asked us to do. I was leaning much more towards educating our own kids than my wife, and I knew the only way that I was going to get her on board with this, because her mother and her father were public school teachers. My mother was actually a public school teacher, and to give her the courage of her conviction to push back, against this, family pressure, um, it had to be obvious to her that there was no other way. And so for the entire year, and unfortunately, to the detriment of our child, we did everything they wanted us to do. We gave them well more than enough rope to hang themselves with, and they did an admirable job. I mean, they were terrible. I mean, they were literally terrible. When what they were doing wasn't working, their only solution was, we're going to do it more, and we're going to do it harder, and we're going to put in place penalties, and take this away and take that away, and the final straw was, it was April break, and on the Friday before the week off, we were at the bookstore looking for books to take with us on vacation, and we asked, Jake, hey, you want to pick out a book to, maybe you can read to us? And he clenched his fists and he got angry, turned bright red. He said, I'm never going to read. I hate reading. I don't want any. And that's when my wife and I are just like, all right, that's enough. And he didn't go back after vacation, and
Wow.
he hasn't been back since. And we gave him about 6 months off completely to just be a kid and de-school and de-stress. And now, he's reading well beyond what he's supposed to be for grade level. That's a whole nother issue, where you have these, the schools are divided up into these arbitrary units by age, when that's not how kids are. I mean, kids are
Right.
individuals. And the other thing I think that doesn't get much attention at all is that the public schools have become extremely toxic for boys. Boys and girls are different. I hate to break that to people, but even other than their mechanical hardware, boys and girls are different, and they learn different ways, and they have, different needs, and they have systematically cut out, activities. They've cut out recess. Even gym class was so micromanaged that, the boys were getting in trouble for being too energetic, in gym class. It was just ridiculous.
Too energetic in gym class.
Too energetic in gym class. And then the solution is, well, we'll just drug them into compliance, and an outcome, the favorites of Ritalin or Adderall or any of the other stimulant medications to literally drug the boys, mostly the vast majority, drug the boys into submission. Yeah, they have no other choice.
Now, how long ago did you take your son out of school?
We'll be going on 2 years here in just a couple of weeks.
Okay, and what was how did you go about doing that? Did you just go into the school and say, we're done with you guys, see you later, our child is out of here? Or what did you have to do?
Well, the state of New Hampshire makes it incredibly easy to educate your own kids, which is basically it's really the way that it should be. Maybe we'll get to this later, but I think that this poses one of the more serious threats because it seems to be gaining traction. But in any event, so after finding out what we needed to do, I honestly completed the entire process with one email where I just wrote out my name, kid's name, we were intending it, and I emailed it to the superintendent. I mean, I honestly wouldn't even give them, the respect of walking into their office and pretending like I was going to ask them permission. I mean, I notified them, and that was it. And if you can tell, I was and still am a little bit indignant, because in the end, nobody asked. No, I mean, this is still within our society. This is a huge thing, and for people that do it, one of the hardest things to overcome, excuse me, is the societal pressure, to go to public school. And so to take this monumental step, nobody asked why. Not a single person in the superintendent's office, not their teachers, not the principal, nobody asked us why we would be doing such a thing. They basically, they don't even want to know that we exist. I can't get numbers from them as far as how many kids in the district are opting out of the educational system for whatever reason. They are really very, very obviously keeping their heads in the sand so that they don't have to deal with this, mounting problem. There a lot of people raise concerns that homeschooled kids or home educated kids are not properly socialized. Well, if you mean that they're not thrown with a bunch of kids that are the same age and consist of, a lot of kids whose families don't bring good values to the table, then yeah, that's not the kind of socialization my kids get. But, there are so many families that have taken their kids out of the public school that, my kids play with other kids all the time. We set up sort of these impromptu co-ops where a parent that is passionate about something puts on a little class and the kids get involved. And the ones that want to do it, and the ones that don't. I mean, when we have groups get together, I mean, you have kids from 4 years old to 12 years old, all mixing it up, and playing in the same space. The older ones, it's good for them. It slows them down. They take a step back. They become a little bit more nurturing towards the younger kids, and the younger kids have role models to look up to. And these are role models that we've been able to select as a family that meet with, our family values. We're not about telling people, and I would never tell anybody how to raise their kid. We're just about exercising our own choice, and aligning our rights.
It's not a choice; it's a right.
Well, yes, I
Big
misspoke.
difference.
I agree. There is. People won't grant you that, and I guess I'm a little bit sensitive in speaking to this topic because you can see all around you what the public school system has done, including making people believe that if you don't go to public school, you're going to end up, in a van down by the river. Yeah, you have no future. But the future for our kids is great, and they may go to college, they may not. I mean, by the time they get old enough, unless it's a really specific technical discipline, I think that the usefulness of college, I mean, it's pretty much gone already.
Yes.
It'll be it'll be even less so. Um, but what we're preparing our kids to be is they're going to be, entrepreneurs. We look, and it's hard because neither my wife or I were trained in this mindset, but we are quickly trying to bring ourselves up to speed where we look around our community and say, what needs to be done? What do people want to do, that they're willing to pay us for? And, as example, he's 8 now. He was 8. That my 8-year-old grew a patch of pumpkins last year, hauled them down to the farmer's market, and then one day made himself $110. And for an 8-year-old, that's not bad.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and he was absolutely psyched. I mean, it worked out great. It was it was the farmer's market right before Halloween, and everybody likes buying from cute little kids, and they cleaned him out. They absolutely. So he's already
And talk
planning out.
about a way of building self-esteem and self-awareness,
Yep.
and not to mention the values and everything that goes with the gardening aspect and then running the business aspect. I mean, there's just huge. Oh my
Right.
goodness, man, that's awesome, Mike. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, that's a
We are
great story.
we're extremely excited for him and very excited about that. And now, like I said, this year he's already ordered what seeds he wants. He saved some of the seeds from his best performing pumpkins last year. You know, they both my son is 8, my daughter is 7, and they both work for about an hour every night on a really small local dairy farm. Again, gets them some pay, but they get exposed to the skills, and but for him, what he sees is, well, now I have the in to get my fertilizer for next year to grow more pumpkins. So he's been wheeling and dealing with the farmer to trade labor for manure. And it's a one off, but that's his niche, and he found it. And um, I think that there are little things like that everybody can do, because, like you said, it sows this spark. It just and it's all it takes to get these guys interested. Is seeing the happy customers and the money roll in, and it's just a beautiful thing.
And it sounds like your son is already latching on to this whole other dynamic that goes with growing and critical thought, like we were talking about a minute ago, that's being suppressed completely, that is enriching his life and enriching your life and your wife's life and your entire community. It enriches everyone. Everyone
Mm,
wins.
It is. It's the ultimate. It's the ultimate micro example of the free market.
Yes,
Everybody's happy. Everybody
everybody's happy.
wins.
Everybody
In a
wins.
free market.
And if your son goes on to become a farmer, according to Jim Rogers, he's going to be a very wealthy young man, because
Yeah.
as Jim Rogers has pointed out, for some time, and I think it was about a year ago that he released the information that the average age of the farmer in America was 58 years old.
Yep.
So 10 years from now, when your son is 18, the average age will be probably north of 65 or even closer to 70. So
Absolutely.
talk about a market waiting to be tapped. I mean, there it is. I mean, I'm not saying that your son's going to grow up and be a farmer, but if he loves it, 10 years from now, the way that he does now, my goodness, he'll be he'll be in like Flynn.
Absolutely. But the thing is that you know, kind of back to what I was started this with. Nobody knows what's even going to be, what the world's going to look like in even 10 years. And so, this is it's a great thing. But again, we try not to be very narrow on our focus. If there's something that's interesting, we try to explore it, to where, to its end, to its conclusion, till they lose interest or say, all right, now I know enough about that, and we'll move on.
And speaking
And
of which,
yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I
no,
want to go
please.
back because I think it's something that's important to the conversation, and that is, you said that your wife was reluctant, and
Hmm.
that there was some that you guys had to go through some stress and strain in order to reach the point of where you're at currently. Where is she at in all of this development as far as your children being homeschooled and her role and where is she at this point?
Well, she's 100% on. She's 100% on. She's 100% on board. Now, the one thing that, and I don't know why, and I'd really like to explore this, but neither my wife or I had all of our critical thinking faculties, beaten out of us sufficiently. We both are able to take a look at what is and apply our own thought process and logic to it and come up with the logical conclusion. And so, it once we were at that point that we had to do something else. The public school just wasn't doing it. That was the impetus to, having her, embrace learning about different ideas, and different techniques. And, it really is, you try things and you keep what works and you discard what doesn't. She right now, I'm the primary breadwinner, and she takes care of most of the education. I mean, I do stuff for them, evenings and weekends, and I also there's another family we're very close with, and they have two boys who are 11 and 9, and so I do, because I'm very hands-on, very mechanical. We do mechanical projects. We make catapults, and we make all kinds of fun projectile shooting things, because that's what boys like. And so I try to get involved as much as I can. But she's completely on board. And the funniest thing is that she got a lot of harassment, a lot of pushback from her mom, especially when this started. But the way our kids have blossomed and grown, being given their own educational space, it says everything you need to know. There's no refuting what we're doing anymore.
Right.
My wife's sister, who has kids of similar ages that are in the public school system, I mean, intellectually, my younger daughter especially, she just runs circles around them. I mean, she uses appropriate language. She's well spoken. She's thoughtful. She's not impulsive. She doesn't need to be told what to do every hour of the day. She's completely able to to stand on her own and figure out what it is. And if you cross her, if you do something that is not, goes against and violates her basic rights, she's going to tell you, and she's going to dress you down, in an appropriate way, and let you know that, her needs aren't being met, and you're aggressing against her. And I think it's just, it's just great. I don't have to worry about being there, every second, to defend my kids against other kids, because they do a perfectly good job on their own, and they do it with words. They do it with, with ideas, and they've learned how to negotiate, how to be diplomatic, because we really try very hard not to be authoritarian, because the idea that raising kids in an authoritarian way, where you sit down, shut up, raise your hand to go to the bathroom, every little bit of your life is micromanaged. It really just conditions people, to live under rulers. It conditions people to live under, under tyranny. And so, we want our kids to call it out when they see it in an appropriate, and respectful way. And so we try to respect them. We were just having a conversation yesterday about how, there was some feedback, and things that our son was doing that we didn't really care for. And we're like, well, all right, well, that's probably just mirroring how we're acting. And rather than in other families where, no, you don't act this way because I said so, we really don't have that. We don't have that club. We don't have that club to use. And so, it makes us be better people. It makes us be more patient. It makes us, speak more respectfully, as we all should, simply because we don't allow ourselves that, that easy out of saying, well, do as I say, not as I do.
So you're getting educated as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's so hard to change, ingrained habits. At middle age, that I really, I mean, our kids are going to have a much better shot. I mean, I can only imagine if I knew what I know now. When I was in my teenage years, you know, um, I would have been hell on wheels. Now I mean, haven't had a bad life by any stretch of the imagination. I'm very blessed, but to have those um, brain shackles released, to have your thought freed to go in any direction that makes sense, it's a blessing that you can't even put a price on.
Last question, Mike, and
Yeah.
that is you'd said that public education is geared more towards stripping the masculinity out of the males. And I would like for you to elaborate on that as far as to help me understand what you mean by that.
Sure. And I mean, I don't know if anybody who's had children knows that typically, boys and girls um, interact with their environments, in very different ways. Boys like to touch and poke and handle, things, and girls tend to be
Everything.
more
They want to touch everything.
everything. And girls are are happier in general. Again, in general, with art, coloring, sitting down, and being more settled, more sedentary, and purely from a management point of view, the public schools have to embrace this model where everybody is sitting down and doing the same thing, working on the same things, because coming up with individual lesson plans just doesn't work. And we're also seeing the knock on effects of the misguided aspects of this movement, in my opinion, where we've tried to hammer in the point that the only difference between boys and girls is their plumbing. And it's simply not true, nor would we want it to be true. I mean, the different aspects that these different ways of thinking bring to us. I mean, it's just we're much richer for it. But everything. I mean, boys like guns. The funniest thing is we are you know a completely non-violent household. I mean, if anything, I deplore the most is violence and war. And then I was just absolutely astounded to see, when my boys were younger, the first thing the boys do when they get together is they pick up sticks and start pointing them at each other. And everything's a gun and everything's a weapon, and it's hilarious to watch. But now you send those same boys to public school, and if they put their fingers into the wrong pattern, like a gun, they're getting kicked out, or at the very least, they're getting the full weight of
The state.
yeah, or just the social pressure, the pressure of social norms applied to them to change. And it's complete. I mean, it's completely misguided and it's completely wrong. I mean, and it really is just the definition of trying to jam a square peg into a round hole. I mean, it doesn't fit. And then you had spoken about Common Core, and I mean, besides the fact that it was written by lobbyists, as we see all these large legislations happening doing, there is no feedback mechanism to change. So if they are making inevitable mistakes, there's no way to change this. And these mistakes are applied to huge swaths of the population. I've seen some of the stuff that comes out about the math. And, from somebody who, I was in your fair city for 4 years at Vanderbilt University as an engineering student. And to be able to confuse and mess up something as straightforward as math really blew me away.
Yeah,
Where
just basic math. We're not
right,
talking about,
no, not calculus,
any
no,
advanced math. We're talking about basic math.
right,
2 plus
addition,
2 equals
subtraction,
4.
yep, yep. And they will tell you that it doesn't matter if you get the right answer as long as your thought process was right. And again, it really, if they wanted to design a system to screw the thinking of kids up, they really couldn't do much better, because we we have really moved into an area where we don't talk about absolutes anymore. and they are trying to
Right.
erode and undermine the one of the last areas where absolutes really truly still apply, mathematics. And it's the whole idea, why do you don't need a constitution, you just go with what's popular, you go with popular sentiment. There's no reason to have a foundation or to anchor us to any kind of principles. Principles are an outdated idea. You need to be modern and you need to be progressive, and you need to go with it, go with the flow, just get about the right answer, as long as you were thinking along the right lines, and
Yeah, as long as you were thinking properly the way we tell you to think,
right.
then that's all that matters. It does. If you come up with 2 plus 2 equals 8, that's fine.
Yeah,
But
no,
as
that's
long as
absolutely
you
fine.
think the way that we tell you to think, then you're right. Then you're spot on.
That's right. And if you get the mathematically right answer, but you didn't think the right way, well, you're wrong.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. Wow. Well, that sure leaves us with a lot to think about.
yeah,
And go
and
ahead.
if people are interested and you get more feedback, I mean, this is the one thing I love sharing with people is ideas. And I hesitant to go into it now because there are so many of them and they take a long time. But if anybody that hears this, if they are thinking about, if it's burning them to, like it was burning us, that they just can't see their kids dragging themselves through the doors of those schools anymore, there has never been a better time to educate your own kids. I mean, the internet, not to mention, you can get any piece of information you've ever wanted at your fingertips, but it also allows you to connect with like-minded people. And
Yep.
maybe you're doing this because you have deep religious convictions and you want to have your kids around, other families, that feel the same way, and you just can't stand, the horror of the secular school. Or maybe again, it's like us, where it was just a matter of critical thinking and watching them try to jam these square pegs into round holes. But if you've got to let that eat at you, and you've got to do what's right. You got to do what is right for your kids.
You're willing to connect with people and to help them through this process?
Absolutely.
How would they get in touch with you?
Sure. The best way to get in touch with me is by email. I live in the state of New Hampshire, so it's NH SilverFarm. So silver like the metal, farm like what we do. NH SilverFarm at gmail.com. I will answer as many questions as I can. I'll point people towards the resources that we found. And I'm also, everything's a two-way street. If people have other ideas or other things that they think that they're burning to tell somebody, I'm happy to hear and consider it all. So
That sounds great. Well, Mike, I'm not going to take up any more of your time because I know you've got a lot on your plate, and
indeed.
we've been speaking with Mike, and you can find all of his work over at silverfarm.podbean.com, and he hosts all of the videos through MP3 that I produce here at the Daily Coin, and he also hosts a whole world of information all on MP3. You can either listen to them or download them, and you can find all of it, like I said, at silverfarm.podbean.com. And Mike,
Or a slightly easier URL is simply silverfarmaudio.com.
Silver Farm Audio, even better.
Perfect.
So, well, Mike, I certainly appreciate all your time today,
Well,
and
thank you, Rory.
we'll have to catch up on this in the not too distant future.
Yeah, that sounds great. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, thank you so much.
Take care.